Get to work.
Damn.
Mm-hmm.
Been working out lately?
Yeah.
Strong arm me like that. Sheesh. Anywho, you know who it is. It's this Cruz of Olympian Multimedia giving you another segment of BAM! Get Things Done. This particular segment, if we maneuver this way, you guys seen it before. It's the studio. We're in A La Studio. You see all the musical equipment here. We got the multiple workstations. So what are we talking about today, Zeus? Well, simply put, we're going to be talking about, for you guys out there, kind of touch base on it on probably a couple previous videos, but it's always good to emphasize certain things, right? Give reminders. As far as you guys out there are looking to start your own home studio, keep in mind what I'm saying, home studio. Yes, you could be very in-depth as far as your studio setup if you have the room in your house and you're able to create an environment where it's soundproof, right? But for people who are working with a modest budget and not looking to incorporate a lot of different things within their studio, they kind of just want the bread and butter type stuff. And then eventually over time, you could kind of work on it, right? You can build your studio and add more different accessories, different types of equipment. Once you start getting an understanding of who you want to be as a producer, I think that's always important. It's number one, simplicity. Understand it's cool to have all the high-tech gadgetry when it comes to putting your studio together. You could have an FX rack. You could go ahead and have this huge soundboard mixer, right? With all the channels. You have like 60 plus different channels, and you got all the different faders and encoders that come with it. But sometimes it's not needed. Certain pieces of equipment that you get, especially when it comes to music, it's already inputted into the DAW that you're using. Remember, DAW being digital audio workstation, just a fancy term for your music editing software. These components are already a part of it. So you may not necessarily need the actual hardware or something physical in order to incorporate these different facets into your music production. So today it's just to give you some enlightenment of what you do need, essentially essentials that you definitely, that you need in order to start your music production. So the obvious would be the computer, right? That's pretty much goes without saying. You need a computer, right? So you can access your DAW, right? Your music editing software. From there, you definitely would need some type of mic. So you see we got a condenser mic. You see over in the corner we got a compressor mic. I've stated before in a previous video about mics that actually plug into your computer. I know a lot of people are not into that at all. I definitely don't have no problem with that. This particular model that you see here is called the PreSonus Revelator, and it works outstanding for me. Has a built-in pop filter. I know I have the additional one that wraps around it, but it actually has one built inside. It also already has effects already built into it as well, and it's easy and accessible. It's as easy as just clicking the button. And the quality when it comes to the vocals it's pretty amazing, at least to me. But I know to some people it's kind of like, I prefer more of a compressor mic. Which again, I'm not disagreeing with your compressor mic are the best in the business. Especially if you get a certain brand, like Newman's. They're very expensive, but they're the best on the market. But if you are going to get a compressor mic, you're definitely going to need one of these. Audio interface. Right? So you can do some mixing on here. You have your inputs and your outputs. With the 48 volt power, it'll allow for, like, for example, for the compressor mic to be charged up. Because in order for it to work properly, the mic has to be charged. It has to have enough power, engaging power, in order for it to, for your vocals to transmit through it, for you to be able to record. You can see here we got some more examples of some audio interfaces. You can even get a modified, smaller version of a soundboard mixer, as you see here. The neat thing about these two is having an audio interface, is the fact that you'll be able to input other hardware, other instruments into it as well. Yes, the next component that you're going to need, we might as well bring it up. You're going to need some type of MIDI controller, as you can see here. We got different versions of it on both workstations. So if you know anything about MIDI controllers, they're USB compatible. They plug in right into your system, into your CPU, your computer. But sometimes you might be utilizing others, like instruments, other type of workstation keyboards. You're going to need the interface to allow you to record, right? Because that allows it to modulate what you're inputting into your computer, into your DAW, to allow you to go ahead and mix and come up with your different configurations for your music production. So that's why it's important to have it. Also, too, you're able to put your studio quality headphones, will be essentially the last thing that you need. You don't necessarily need it. Again, it's up to you to determine how you want to go about setup. Some people prefer to use studio monitors, as you see here, to hear the playback. Some people prefer using studio headphones. I use both. I was taught, especially once you start getting into the mixing and you're looking into mastering as well, it's good to hear the music from multiple outlets, so you get an understanding of the spectrum when it comes to your music production, to making sure the frequencies and the decibels are all within range, and there's clarity and spacing between your vocals, between the melody that you make, your drums, your bass line, so forth and so on. You make sure that the highs, your lows, and your mids are properly within range as well. It's good to hear it from multiple. I even utilize these earbuds. These are Beats, which are amazing. But you don't know what the listener is going to be listening, how they're going to be listening to your music. So that's something you need to keep in mind. They might be listening through some simple car speakers, right? Or they may not have access to this really sophisticated sound system, right? They might just be hearing it through the speakers in their computer. You don't know how they're listening to your music. So you kind of got to be aware to make sure the clarity is there no matter how they're listening to your music. So when you're doing the playback, listening to the playback, and as you're going about your mixing process, you might want to listen to everything in multiple outlets to ensure you're getting the top quality and clarity. Right? So those are your basic essentials. Is to have, besides the computer and besides having some type of DAW, is to have a microphone of some sort, right? An audio interface. Somehow to hear the playback, whether it's a headset or monitors. And then you have your MIDI controller. Again, this is determining what type of producer you are. Are you more comfortable playing chords off the keys? Or your more preference is to use some type of pads? Right? Or maybe you want something like this, where it's kind of hybrid, where you have the keys and the pads, along with the faders, and the encoders are already attached, as you can see up here. And then you have more nuances attached to it, such as your jog wheels, where you can add a pitch shifter or modulation to your production. Here's another example of just a mix pad. So that's something you have to determine yourself. What are you more comfortable when it comes to making music? Utilizing pads, utilizing keys. Or you want to use something like this. I talked about it before, the Novation Launchpad. I love this thing. This is like in my top 5 of all my studio equipment. I might make a video on that, show you guys what are my top 5, top 10 things. This, what I like about it is because you break it up into grids. In this particular case, 4 grids. Within each pad, you can input a different sound. What's great about this is within your library, your sound library, whatever is your go-tos, you could kind of just input it into these pads and kind of characterize everything, right? So I could create one grid where it's strictly about drums and bass lines, right? Then I could do another one where it's just effects. I could do another one where it's just all melodies. And then I could do another one where it's a lot of like audio samples, like Vox samples, or maybe just some samples strictly where I just use from my mouth, you know, that I input into the microphone. Everything could be spaced out within these grids, and then I could go ahead and put everything in sequence to start building my beat. So it's all dependent on you, on what type of producer you want to be and what you're most comfortable with. Please don't go by other people's setups. It's about you and your level of comfortability and setting it up so that you can make the best possible music you want to make. Always remember that and keep that in mind. Also, too, as a quick note, depending on what MIDI controllers that you can get, understand that some MIDI controllers are synced with a software specifically, which means you might not be able to utilize this MIDI controller in another interface. Case in point, you see here we got the Native Instrument, we have the MIDI controller or the MIDI keyboard, along with Machine, which is the mix pad. So you couldn't utilize this hardware on another software because it's specifically designed for Native Instrument, right? So the only way you're able to utilize this in a different setting is you can use Native Instrument as a plugin for your DAW, which check that out in a previous video of Get Things Done. We talked about plugins and how to insert that into your DAW. But other than that, if you were using another type of software, same thing when it goes. Another example is Arturia. It works very well with Pigments and Analog Lab 5. But other than using it as a plugin in your DAW, you wouldn't necessarily be able to use this hardware for another type of DAW or another type of music software that allows you to create music. So also keep that in mind as well. You might want something a little bit more universal, like Novation, the launch key, where you can pretty much utilize that in any DAW, any type of music software. Got another example of a launch key up here. I just showed you the launch pad, the sequencer. Even utilizing something like this with the drums, just put out a video to highlight the Alesis SR18. Definitely recommend it if you're just looking for very impactful drums and create bass lines. This could be utilized with any type of software. So it's all depending on what you want. If you're more specific and you just want to use one brand versus using something that's a little bit more universal and you can use it in any setup. So just keep that in mind. Last but not least, this is something I recommend. It's optional. It's not mandatory. I always recommend to people that they need to have a workstation keyboard, a traditional workstation keyboard. As you see here, we have the Yamaha. Over there, we have the Roland. The reason why I recommend these is because unless you play the instruments organically, this gives you the full library and full spectrum when it comes to instrument. Woodwind, brass, strings, percussion. So you're able to emulate these different instruments into your production. You know, especially when it comes to, if you know anything about Alpha Omega, we're very orchestrated. We try to create these soundscapes, music that tells a story, right? So we definitely need this spectrum of instruments because utilizing them in the perfect way really brings out and puts a shine and really brings like that storytelling effect basically to our music production. So I definitely recommend at least having one. It's optional though. You don't have to because we live in a world of MIDI and doing everything through MIDI. But I definitely recommend at least having one. Because not only can you utilize and create all these different things, excuse me, with the library of instruments that's on there, but it also gives you functions on here, such as creating an intro, creating an outro. You could create, can't talk today, guys, but you could create bridges within your production that can lead into another sample, another piece of production. And usually they have other type of features on here as well that you can utilize. And the great thing about it is I don't know a brand of keyboard that's not MIDI compatible. So as long as you have, ta-da, the audio interface, you're able to plug in the keyboard into the interface and go ahead and record and go about your music production. You can also do some sequencing, and you can also do some sampling on here as well. So that's why it's great. Even using a brand like this, Roland, is really great because you can actually go to their website and then you can actually add on more presets, more loops, more sounds from their website onto the workstation keyboard, since it has a onboard computer built inside into it. And then that just increases your library on here of samples that you can utilize. So that's why I recommend having that. Or you could substitute a MIDI keyboard and just utilize the workstation keyboard. You don't have to be stringent in just using MIDI. You could just use the workstation keyboard if you're looking for more organic sounds and a little bit more control as far as building things from scratch. Again, as long as you have the audio interface, workstation keyboards, trust me guys, you can go create an entire beat just using a workstation keyboard. So again, do your research, get an understanding of who you want to be as a producer and how you want to go about your process. And it's really simple. And as far as the budget is concerned, I would allot for myself at least $1,000. That's a safe bet. I think it's a safe margin to go ahead and get some quality stuff to start off with and then look to build from there. All right. So that's about it. I appreciate you guys tuning in. I hope this was helpful. I just wanted to give you guys some quick insight on the start your own studio. As you see here, it's a little bit elaborate. We got a lot of things going on here, but it's only because I need the multiple workstations because I work with multiple people. And being that I have my partner in crime, shout out to JSO, aka Alpha, it doesn't make sense for both of us to be all huddled up on one workstation and on one piece of equipment in order for us to do what we got to do when we come to our music production. So it makes sense for us to offset it into two different workstations, and we just created options for themselves. So I recommend if you're starting your home studio, just start off small, get with a brand that you trust, get to the essentials, get really good at it. Study, practice, study, practice, study, practice. Make application of what you learn. Once you get a firm grip and get an understanding of how to go about your music creating your music process, in turn creating your music production, then I will venture out and create options for yourselves, get other different pieces of equipment. It's nothing like having options. It really isn't. So that's about it. I appreciate you guys tuning in. You know who it is. Zeus Cruz, Olympian Multimedia. Only thing left to say is woo, get things done. Check you later.